He remembers exactly how you take your coffee. He forgets the date of your birthday. He sends you a text at midnight. Then he vanishes for a week straight. That is not confusion. That is not mixed signals. That is a pattern, and patterns are never accidents. By the time this video is over, you will know the exact 5 signs that separate a person who truly loves you from someone who is only using you until something better comes along. Have you ever felt like you were begging for scraps of affection from someone who was fully able to give you everything but simply chose not to? Keep watching, because sign number 3 is the one almost nobody ever talks about, and it is the one that stings the most once you finally understand it. Let's talk about something most people never learn until it costs them years of their life. There is a real difference between someone who struggles to open up because they are afraid and someone who has figured out that staying just out of reach is what keeps you hooked. Both can look identical on the surface. Both can whisper the same soft words at 2 in the morning, but underneath they are running 2 completely different programs. Emotional intelligence is not about being kind. It is about paying attention to what people actually do, not just what they say, and using that to protect your own heart. Most of us were never taught this. We were raised to listen to words. We were raised to believe promises. Nobody ever sat us down and said, watch the pattern, not the performance. So today, we are going to close that gap, one sign at a time. Someone with an avoidant style who genuinely cares about you will still struggle with closeness. That struggle shows up as awkward apologies, clumsy attempts at vulnerability, and real effort, even when it does not come naturally to them. But someone who is avoidant and simply using you does not struggle at all. They coast. They take whatever feels good and walk away from whatever feels demanding, and they do it so smoothly that you barely even notice you are being managed instead of loved. Here is the first sign, and it is the loudest one once you learn how to hear it. Sign number 1 is what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, though you probably know it by a different name already. You call it the roller coaster. One week they are texting you good morning with a heart attached. They are calling just to hear your voice. They are already making plans for next month like you are a permanent part of their future. Then without any warning, the warmth disappears. Messages shrink to almost nothing. Calls stop coming. You go from feeling like the center of their world to feeling like a stranger they used to know, and you have no clue what you did wrong. Here is the truth nobody wants to say out loud. You did not do anything wrong. This has nothing to do with you. It is a mechanism, and it works exactly like a slot machine. If someone was cold to you constantly, you would leave. If someone stayed warm all the time, you would relax and stop chasing them. But warm, then cold, then warm again. That is what keeps your nervous system locked on high alert. Your brain begins treating their attention like a prize it has to earn. You start performing for them. You start shrinking yourself, adjusting yourself, trying to crack the code that brings the warm version of them back. And here is the cruel twist. There is no code to crack. The hot and cold behavior is not a response to anything you did. It is a strategy, whether they even realize it or not, that keeps you invested without ever requiring them to invest anything back. Ask yourself something honest right now. Does it feel like you are in a relationship, or does it feel more like you are trying to win one? Because love is supposed to feel like a home you get to relax inside of, not a game you have to keep replaying just to earn a higher score. Real closeness, even with someone who leans avoidant, still has consistency underneath it. The affection might be quieter, it might be less dramatic, but it does not disappear and resurface on a schedule that always seems to line up with their convenience and never yours. If the warmth only shows up when they are bored, lonely, or in between other options, that is not love finding its footing. That is a habit of treating you like an emotional backup generator. Picture a specific moment you have probably lived through yourself. You had an amazing weekend together. Everything felt effortless. They laughed at your jokes, held your hand while walking down the street, talked about a trip you two could take someday. Then Monday arrived and the messages slowed down to almost nothing. No explanation, no sign that anything had changed. You spent the whole week replaying that weekend in your mind, hunting for the exact sentence or the exact moment where you must have ruined everything. And here is what almost nobody ever tells you. There was no moment. There was no mistake. The pulling away was never a reaction to something you did. It was simply the pattern completing itself the way it always does, whether you were flawless that weekend or not. This is exactly why the hot and cold cycle works so well at keeping people trapped. It does not just leave you confused, it makes you feel responsible for fixing something that was never broken by you to begin with. You start auditing your own behavior. Was I too much? Was I not enough? Did I text back too quickly? Did I seem too excited? You start shrinking the parts of yourself that once felt joyful and open, because somewhere along the way, you learned that joy and openness got followed by distance. So you start rationing them, just in case. That is not a relationship helping you grow. That is a relationship training you to disappear a little more each time. Now let's move on to sign number 2, because this one is sneakier. It hides behind a very convincing disguise. Sign number 2 is emotional distance, dressed up as independence. You have heard the lines before. I am just not good with labels. I need my space. I am not really a relationship person. On the surface, these sound like honesty. They sound like someone being upfront about who they are. And sometimes that really is exactly what it is. Some people genuinely need more room to breathe, and that is a real, valid attachment pattern that deserves compassion, not judgment. But here is how you spot the difference between someone protecting their own healing and someone protecting their exit. Watch what happens after the label conversation. Does their behavior actually match the distance they claim to need? Or does the distance only apply to commitment, while the intimacy, the intensity, and the access to you stay exactly the same? This is the trap. Someone who is using you will refuse to put a label on things, but keep every single benefit of the relationship anyway. They will still want the late-night conversations. They will still want you available whenever they call. They will still want the physical closeness, the emotional support, the comfort of having someone in their corner. They just refuse to give you the one thing that would require accountability, a name for what this actually is. Because a name comes with expectations. A name means you get to ask questions. A name means you get to be upset when they disappear. No label means no accountability, and no accountability is exactly where they want to stay. This is emotional distance being used as a permission slip. It says, I get to enjoy everything about being close to you, but you do not get to ask anything of me in return. That is not fear of intimacy. That is comfort with imbalance. Pay attention to how you feel after these conversations. Do you feel reassured, like they are working through something real and asking you to be patient with them? Or do you feel dismissed, like your need for clarity got treated as too much, too needy, too demanding? Your feelings are information. Do not talk yourself out of what your body already knows. There is also a quieter version of this sign, and it shows up in language, not just in labels. Listen closely to how they talk about the future. Do they say things like we, or does everything stay carefully vague? Someday, maybe, we will see. Vague language costs nothing. It lets them keep every door open at once, the door to you and the door to whatever else might come along later. A person who is genuinely building something real with you will eventually start speaking in specifics, even small ones, because specifics require commitment. And commitment is exactly what they are handing you piece by piece. Someone who is using you will stay in the fog on purpose, because the fog is where they get to enjoy your presence without ever being tied down to a promise. You might even notice they get a little irritated when you ask for clarity, as if your questions were the problem instead of their avoidance. This is a quiet way of flipping the script instead of dealing with the real imbalance. They make you feel like you are the one stirring up tension simply by asking for honesty. If asking a fair question about where you stand gets treated like an accusation, that reaction is telling you something important. People who have nothing to hide rarely feel cornered by clarity. All right, before we go any further, I need 3 seconds of your time. If sign number 1 or sign number 2 just describes someone in your life, type the word mirror in the comments right now. Just that one word, mirror. I read every single comment, and I want to see how many of you are recognizing this pattern in real time. And if this video is already hitting close to home, hit subscribe now, because sign number 4 is going to explain exactly why this keeps happening to the same kind of person over and over, and you do not want to miss it. Let's keep going, because sign number 3 is the quiet one. It does not announce itself with drama. It shows up in the small moments, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Sign number 3 is convenience-based contact, also known as breadcrumbing. This is when someone only reaches out because it happens to suit them. It is 9 at night on a Friday, and suddenly a message pops up. It is a slow afternoon at their job, and suddenly the phone rings. It is not planned. It is not consistent. It is triggered by their boredom, their loneliness, their need for validation, and nothing more. Here is how you spot it clearly. Ask yourself who reaches out first more often. If it is almost always you initiating and their replies only show up after you have already done the emotional labor of starting the conversation, that is not mutual interest. That is you being kept on a short list of options they check whenever nothing better is happening. The cruel genius of breadcrumbing is that it hands you just enough to keep hope alive. A message here, a compliment there, a late night call that feels intimate and real. Just enough contact that walking away feels irrational because look, they still care, right? Or they still reached out. But contact is not commitment. Attention is not affection. A message at midnight after 4 days of silence is not romance. It is a habit of treating you like an emotional snack whenever they get hungry. Someone who is genuinely building something with you does not treat communication like an afterthought. They do not wait around for boredom to strike before they think of you. Real connection, even a slow, cautious, avoidant kind of connection, still has a rhythm to it. It still shows effort that appears when it is inconvenient, not just when it is easy. Ask yourself this. If you stopped reaching out completely, for real, no texts, no calls, nothing, how long would it actually take before they noticed you were gone? For some of you, the honest answer to that question is going to sting. But it is better to know now than to keep pouring yourself into someone who only remembers you exist when they have nothing else going on. There is a version of this test you can quietly run without telling anyone what you are doing. Simply stop initiating for a stretch of time, not out of spite, not as a manipulative game, but as an honest experiment to see the real truth of the connection without your own effort covering it up. Watch what happens. If they notice, if they reach out first, if they ask whether everything is okay, that tells you something. If silence just gets answered with more silence, that tells you something too, and it tells you everything you really need to know. People make time for what matters to them. They make excuses for what does not. It really is that simple, even when part of us desperately wants it to be more complicated than that. Breadcrumbing is also seductive because it rewards you unpredictably, which, as we already covered, is exactly what keeps a brain hooked. One good message after days of silence can feel more intense, more meaningful than a full week of steady, boring, reliable communication from someone else. Your brain mistakes intensity for importance. But intensity born from scarcity is not the same as importance born from genuine care. Learn to tell the two apart, because one will fill your life with peace, and the other will keep you checking your phone at 2 in the morning, waiting for crumbs that were never meant to be a meal. Now, sign number 4, and this one ties everything we have talked about together. This one explains the why behind the whole pattern. Sign number 4 is compartmentalization. This means you exist in one part of their life, and only that part. You are not introduced to their friends. You are not mentioned to their family. You do not show up anywhere in the parts of their world that matter to them beyond the two of you behind closed doors. You are essentially kept in a separate room, one they can step into whenever they want intimacy and step out of whenever they want to protect the rest of their life from you. This is one of the clearest signs of being used rather than valued, because integration is one of the strongest signals of genuine investment. When someone truly wants you in their life, they want you in all of it. They want their people to know you exist. They want to bring you into the spaces that matter to them, even if it makes them a little nervous, even if it is not perfect. Discomfort with vulnerability still shows up as effort. Using someone shows up as containment. Think about it from a purely logical angle. If someone is proud of what they have with you, why would they hide it? If someone sees a future with you, why would you stay a secret, or worse, an afterthought they mention in passing, without ever actually including you? The answer is uncomfortable, but it is honest. Keeping you compartmentalized keeps their options open. It keeps their reputation protected. It keeps you easy to remove without consequences, because nobody in their circle even knew you were there to begin with. This does not mean every slow introduction to friends and family is a red flag. Some people, especially those with a genuinely anxious relationship to closeness, take time to blend their worlds, because vulnerability terrifies them. The difference, again, is in the trajectory. Is the door slowly opening, even a little, even awkwardly, or has it stayed shut the whole time behind excuses that never actually change? If months have gone by and you are still a stranger to everyone who matters to them, that is not shyness anymore. That is a decision, and decisions, unlike fear, are things people make on purpose. Compartmentalization also shows up in smaller, quieter ways that are easy to miss if you are not paying close attention. Maybe your calls only happen when they are alone, never on speaker, never with anyone else in earshot. Maybe your photos together never make it anywhere public, or if they do, they disappear within a day, quietly archived, like evidence being cleaned up. Maybe plans with you always seem to fall apart the moment a group event with their friends comes up, as if you are the version of their life that only gets scheduled when nothing more visible is competing for the slot. None of these details prove anything on their own, but strung together, they tell a consistent story. You are being treated less like a partner and more like a compartment, a separate file folder in their life that gets opened for comfort and shut the moment it might require an explanation. Ask yourself honestly whether you have ever felt proud to be seen with them, and whether that pride was ever actually allowed to be visible, or whether it always had to stay behind closed doors, convenient, hidden, and easy to deny if anyone asked. Now we arrive at sign number 5, and this is the one that ties every other sign together. This is the one that reveals the whole imbalance in a single, simple observation. Sign number 5 is one-sided emotional labor. This means you are the one remembering the important dates. You are the one checking in when they seem off. You are the one adjusting your schedule, your mood, your needs, just to keep the peace and keep things comfortable for them. Meanwhile, when you need support, when you are struggling, when you just need someone to show up, the effort mysteriously disappears. This is the ultimate giveaway, because using someone is, at its core, an extraction. It pulls energy, comfort, validation, and time without ever giving an equal amount back. Love, even complicated, avoidant, imperfect love, still circulates. It still finds its way back around, even clumsily. Being used does not circulate. It only flows one way, toward them. Here is a simple test you can run in your own head right now. Think about the last 5 times you needed emotional support. How many of those times did they actually show up fully without you having to ask twice, without you having to explain why it mattered? Now think about the last 5 times they needed support. How many of those times did you show up instantly, without hesitation, without being asked? If those two numbers look wildly different, you already have your answer. You have been carrying a relationship that was only ever built to carry them. Emotional labor is invisible work, which is exactly why it goes unnoticed for so long. Remembering they had a rough day at work and checking in about it. Softening your tone because you can sense they are stressed. Planning planning around their moods, their schedule, their comfort, almost automatically, without even realizing you are still doing it. This kind of labor becomes so normal that you stop counting it. Meanwhile, the moments where you needed that same consideration and did not get it stand out sharply, painfully, because they were rare enough to actually stick in your memory. A relationship built on mutual care does not need a spreadsheet to prove its balance, because both people simply show up for each other without needing to be asked twice. But when the imbalance runs deep enough, you start doing exactly that. You start quietly keeping score, not because you are petty, but because some part of you already suspects the truth and is gathering proof so it can finally believe it. If you have ever caught yourself mentally tallying who reached out last, who apologized first, who cancelled plans without any consequence, trust that instinct. It is not overthinking, it is pattern recognition, and it exists to protect you. This is the part where I want to be honest with you, because right now you deserve honesty more than you deserve comfort. Recognizing these 5 signs is not about turning anyone into a villain. People with avoidant patterns are often carrying old wounds, old fears, old survival strategies that made sense once and no longer serve them. Compassion for their story is allowed, but compassion for someone's pain does not mean sacrificing your own well-being while you wait around for them to heal on their own timeline, especially when there is no sign they are even trying. There is a difference between loving someone through their fear and losing yourself to their convenience. The first requires patience, communication, and mutual effort. The second requires nothing from them and everything from you. Learn to tell those two apart, and you will save yourself years of confusion, self-blame, and heartbreak that was never actually about your worth to begin with.